My stepsister scammed me out of $5,000 for a medical emergency, then posted vacation photos, so I exposed her and she lost everyone. This is probably the most painful story I've ever had to tell, but I need to get it off my chest. My name is Jake, and this is about how my own stepsister manipulated me, stole $5,000 from me, and how karma eventually caught up with her in the most spectacular way possible. To understand this story, I need to give you some background. My dad married my stepmom Sarah when I was 15, and she brought her daughter Madison into our lives. Madison was 17 at the time, 2 years older than me, and from day one, she made it clear that she wasn't thrilled about having a new stepbrother. Growing up in a blended family wasn't easy. Madison always felt like she had to compete for her mom's attention, and I guess she saw me and my dad as threats to that. She was the type of person who could be incredibly charming when she wanted something, but cold and distant when she didn't. Get her way. Still, over the years, we developed what I thought was a decent relationship. We weren't best friends, but we got along well enough, especially during holidays and family gatherings. After high school, I went to college and studied computer science. I worked part-time throughout school and was really careful with my money. I lived in cheap apartments, ate ramen more nights than I care to admit, and saved every penny I could. By the time I graduated and landed my first job as a software developer, I had managed to save up about $8,000. It wasn't much, but I was proud of it. That money represented years of sacrifice and discipline. Madison, on the other hand, took a different path. She went to community college for a while but dropped out after 2 years. She bounced between different jobs, retail, waitressing, customer service. Never really settling into anything long-term, she still lived at home with our parents, and seemed to struggle financially, but I figured that was normal for someone her age trying to figure things out. The incident that changed everything happened last March. I was at work when I got a frantic phone call from Madison. She was crying hysterically, barely able to get words out between sobs. My heart immediately started racing because I'd never heard her sound so terrified. "Jake, I need help," she gasped through tears. "I'm at the hospital, and they found something. During my routine checkup, the doctors say I need emergency surgery, and my insurance won't cover all of it. I don't know what to do." I felt like the ground had dropped out from under me. Despite our complicated relationship, Madison was still family, and hearing her in such distress was devastating. I asked her what was wrong, and she told me the doctors had found a suspicious mass that needed to be removed immediately. She said the surgery would cost $7,000 upfront, and she only had $2,000 in savings. I've already asked Mom, but you know how tight money is for them right now with Dad's medical bills, she continued, referring to some ongoing health issues my father had been dealing with. I wouldn't ask if I wasn't desperate. "Jake, I'm scared, and I don't have anyone else to turn to." I didn't hesitate for even a second. Family is family, right? I told her I would transfer $5,000 to her account immediately. I remember the relief in her voice when I said that, and it made me feel good to know I could help her in such a critical moment. I rushed to my bank during my lunch break and wired the money to her account. Madison called me about an hour later to confirm. She'd received it, thanking me profusely and promising she'd pay me back as soon as she could get back on her feet after the surgery. She said the operation was scheduled for the next morning and that she'd keep me updated. For the next week, I was constantly worried about her. I texted her daily asking how she was feeling and if she needed anything. Her responses were brief, but seemed consistent with someone recovering from surgery. She said she was in pain, tired, and that the doctors wanted her to rest for a few weeks before returning to work. I offered to visit her in the hospital or at home, but she always had an excuse. First, she said the hospital had strict visiting policies due to COVID protocols. Then, when she was supposedly home recovering, she claimed she was too weak for visitors and that our parents were taking care of her. It seemed reasonable at the time, especially given how serious the surgery had sounded. About 2 weeks after the supposed surgery, I was scrolling through Instagram during my morning coffee when I saw something that made my blood run cold. Madison had posted a photo of herself on a beach, cocktail in hand, with the caption, "Much needed getaway." Sometimes you just have to treat yourself. #blessed, #vacation vibes, #living my best life. I stared at the photo for a full minute, trying to process what I was seeing. This was posted just 12 hours ago, according to the timestamp. In the photo, Madison looked perfectly healthy, tanned, smiling, wearing a bikini, clearly enjoying herself on what appeared to be a tropical vacation. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through her recent posts. There were dozens of photos from the past few days showing her parasailing, swimming, dining at expensive restaurants, and lounging by resort pools. The locations were tagged as various spots in Cancun, Mexico. I felt physically sick. The woman, who had supposedly just undergone emergency surgery and was too weak to see visitors, was clearly living it up on a luxury vacation that probably cost exactly $5,000. I immediately called her, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again and again, but she wasn't answering. Finally, I sent her a text message. "Madison, I saw your Instagram posts. We need to talk immediately." She didn't respond for 6 hours. When she finally called me back, I could hear beach sounds and music in the background. "Hey Jake, what's up?" She said casually, as if nothing was wrong. "What's up?" I repeated, incredulous. "Madison, you told me you had emergency surgery 2 weeks ago. You said you were recovering and too weak for visitors. But you're clearly on vacation in Mexico right now." There was a long pause before she responded, and when she did, her voice had lost all its casual friendliness. "Look, Jake, I can explain ... then explain," I said. "Right now." She started spinning this elaborate story about how the surgery had been postponed and the doctors had recommended she take a stress relief vacation to prepare for the procedure. She claimed she'd gotten a great deal on the trip and that it was exactly what she needed before going under the knife, but I wasn't buying it anymore. Too many things didn't add up. If the surgery had been postponed, why hadn't she told me? Why had she been pretending to recover from an operation that never happened? And most importantly, why was she spending money on a luxury vacation when she'd claimed to be in a financial crisis over medical bills? "Madison, I want the truth," I said. Firmly, "Right now, no more lies." Another long pause, and then she sighed. "Fine," she said, and her voice took on a defiant tone. "There never was any surgery, okay? I needed money for this trip, and I knew you had it. You make good money now, and $5,000 isn't that much to you. I was planning to pay you back eventually." I was speechless. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. She had manipulated my love and concern for her, played on my worst fears about losing a family member, and stolen $5,000 from me to fund a vacation. "You lied about having cancer." I managed to say I never said it was cancer. She replied defensively, "I just said they found something suspicious. And it's not like you can't afford it. You're always talking about your job and your savings." I hung up on her. I was so angry I was shaking. This wasn't just about the money, though $5,000 was significant to me. This was about trust, family, and the fact that she had deliberately and calculatedly deceived me in the cruelest way possible. I spent the next few days trying to figure out what to do. Part of me wanted to just write off the money and cut Madison out of my life entirely. But another part of me was furious that she thought she could get away with this and that she showed absolutely no remorse for what she'd done. That's when I decided to take screenshots of all her Instagram posts from the vacation. I documented every photo, every caption, every location tag. I also saved our text message conversations and recorded the phone call where she admitted to lying about the medical emergency. My first step was to tell our parents what had happened. I drove over to their house that weekend and sat them down for a serious conversation. I showed them the evidence, Madison's Instagram posts, our text exchanges, and explained the timeline of events. My stepmom Sarah was devastated. She had no idea Madison had done this, and she was mortified that her daughter had deceived and stolen from me. My dad was furious, not just about the money, but about the way Madison had manipulated family bonds to commit what was essentially fraud. They immediately tried to call Madison, but she was still in Mexico and not answering her phone, Sarah promised. They would handle the situation as soon as Madison returned home, and that she would make sure I got my money back, even if they had to pay it themselves, but I wasn't done yet. Madison's Instagram account was public, and she had been bragging about her treat-yourself vacation to her hundreds of followers. Many of these followers were friends, co-workers, and family members who knew about our blended family situation. I decided to create a detailed post on my own social media accounts explaining exactly what had happened. I included screenshots of Madison's Instagram posts alongside timestamps of our conversations about her medical emergency. I was careful to present just the facts, letting the evidence speak for itself. The post went viral within hours. Friends and family members who had seen Madison's vacation posts were shocked to learn the truth about how she'd funded her trip. People began sharing my post, commenting with their own experiences of being deceived by Madison and expressing outrage at her behavior, but the real consequences started when Madison's employer saw the post. She worked at a local bank, and apparently, someone she worked with saw my post and shared it with management. Banking is an industry where trust and integrity are paramount, and her employer was not pleased to learn that one of their employees had committed fraud against a family member. Madison called me in a panic when she returned from Mexico and found out what had happened. "Jake, you need to take down that post right now," she demanded. "I'm in serious trouble at work because of what you wrote." "Good," I replied. "Maybe you should have thought about the consequences before you decided to scam your own family. This is going to ruin my life," she screamed. "I could lose my job over this." "You ruined your own life when you chose to lie and steal from me," I said calmly. "I just made sure people knew the truth about what kind of person you really are." She begged me to take down the post, promising she'd pay me back immediately. But it was too late. The damage was done, and honestly, I didn't believe her promises anymore. She'd already proven she was willing to say anything to get what she wanted. Within a week of returning from her vacation, Madison was fired from her job at the bank. Her employer cited integrity issues and conduct unbecoming of a financial institution employee. Word spread quickly through our small town, and Madison found it difficult to find new employment, especially in any position involving money or trust. Her personal relationships also suffered. Friends who had seen my post began to distance themselves from her, questioning whether they could trust someone who would deceive their own family. Several people came forward with stories of Madison borrowing money from them under questionable circumstances, suggesting this wasn't an isolated incident. The social consequences were severe, but the financial ones were equally devastating. Without steady employment, Madison couldn't keep up with her car payments, credit card bills, and other financial obligations. She had to move back in with our parents full-time, and Sarah told me later that Madison had racked up significant debt funding her lifestyle, including the Mexico vacation. Our parents were furious with Madison and embarrassed by her behavior. They made her write me a formal apology letter and created a repayment plan to get me my money back. Since Madison couldn't work in banking anymore and was struggling to find employment elsewhere, our parents ended up paying me back themselves over several months. The family dynamics changed permanently after this incident. Madison became increasingly isolated and bitter, blaming me for overreacting and ruining her life over what she still claimed was just a misunderstanding. Our parents, however, saw her actions for what they really were, a calculated betrayal of family trust. During family gatherings, the tension was palpable. Madison would sit silently, clearly resentful, while everyone else tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy. She eventually stopped attending most family events altogether, preferring to sulk in her room or find excuses to be elsewhere. The incident also revealed other troubling patterns in Madison's behavior that our family had overlooked or rationalized over the years. Our parents started connecting dots about mysterious financial problems she'd had in the past, times she'd borrowed money and been slow to pay it back, and various dramatic emergencies that had always seemed to conveniently require financial assistance. About 6 months after the Mexico incident, Madison finally found a job at a retail store, but it paid significantly less than her banking position. She was bitter about the downgrade and blamed me for her reduced circumstances. She claimed that my social media post had created a scarlet letter that followed her around, making it difficult for her to rebuild her life. I'll admit, there were moments when I felt guilty about how completely her life had unraveled. But then I'd remember the calculation and cruelty of her deception and how she'd shown zero remorse even after being caught. She never apologized for the emotional trauma of making me believe she was seriously ill, or for the way she'd manipulated my love for family against me. The most telling moment came about a year later, during a rare family dinner where Madison was present. Someone mentioned a news story about financial fraud, and Madison actually had the audacity to say, "I don't understand why people make such a big deal about money. It's just money." That comment revealed everything about her mindset. She still didn't understand that this was never just about money. It was about trust, integrity, family bonds, and the fact that she'd weaponized my deepest fears about losing someone I cared about to fund her vacation. Looking back now, 2 years after the incident, I don't regret exposing what Madison did. Some people have told me I was too harsh, that I should have handled it privately within the family. But Madison had committed fraud, plain and simple. She had calculated exactly how to manipulate me, executed her plan perfectly, and showed no remorse when caught. My social media post didn't ruin Madison's life. Her own choices did that. I simply made sure that people knew the truth about her character and behavior. In a way, I probably saved other people from being victimized by her in the future. The $5,000 I lost was significant to me, but the real cost was the destruction of our family relationship. Madison and I don't speak anymore, except for the occasional awkward interaction at major family events. She's never genuinely apologized for what she did, instead maintaining that I overreacted and destroyed her life over a misunderstanding. Our parents eventually recovered the money for me, but the emotional impact took much longer to heal. For months afterward, I found myself questioning other relationships and being more skeptical when people asked for help. Madison's betrayal had taught me that even family members could be calculating and manipulative when it served their purposes. The experience also taught me valuable lessons about setting boundaries and protecting myself from manipulation. I now verify claims that seem suspicious, even from family members. I've learned to distinguish between genuine emergencies and manufactured crises designed to extract money or sympathy. Madison's life never fully recovered from the consequences of her fraud. She eventually found more stable employment, but never again in the financial sector. Her reputation in our community remained tarnished, and she struggled with relationships, both personal and professional. She ultimately moved to another state, claiming she needed a fresh start away from people who couldn't forgive and forget. I sometimes wonder if she ever truly understood the gravity of what she'd done, or if she still sees herself as the victim in this situation based on her continued resentment and lack of genuine remorse. I suspect it's the latter. The whole experience fundamentally changed how I view family relationships and trust. I learned that shared DNA or marriage certificates don't automatically make someone trustworthy, and that enabling bad behavior in the name of family loyalty can actually make things worse for everyone involved. If I had to do it over again, I would make the same choice to expose Madison's fraud. She counted on my shame and desire to keep family matters private to protect her from consequences. By bringing her behavior into the light, I not only protected myself but potentially saved others from being victimized in the future. The truth has a way of coming out eventually, and in Madison's case, that truth revealed someone willing to exploit the deepest bonds of family for personal gain. That's not someone I want in my life, regardless of our family connection. Sometimes doing the right thing means accepting that relationships will be permanently damaged. But living authentically and standing up for yourself is more important than maintaining false peace with people who have proven they can't be trusted. Madison made her choices, and I made mine. I have no regrets about ensuring she faced the full consequences of her actions. Family loyalty should never be a shield for fraud, manipulation, and betrayal.